The woman you want is waiting for something you do not know how to give her. Not flowers, not compliments, not the attention you have been pouring into her like water, into a bucket with no bottom. She is waiting for something deeper, something primal, something that operates beneath her conscious awareness in the ancient architecture of her psychology. And here is the part that should disturb you. She cannot tell you what she needs, not because she is hiding it, because she does not have words for it. These needs exist below language, in the realm of instinct and feeling. She knows when they are being met. She knows when they are not. But she cannot explain the difference to you, no matter how many times you ask what is wrong. Carl Jung spent decades mapping the unconscious mind. He discovered that human beings are driven by forces they cannot name, forces that shape every decision, every attraction, every moment of desire. What I am about to reveal are 7 of those forces, as they operate specifically in female psychology. These are not tricks. These are not manipulations. These are fundamental human needs that have existed since the beginning of our species. Needs that evolution hardwired into women because meeting them meant survival, protection, and the continuation of life itself. The men who understand these needs do not chase women. They do not beg for attention. They do not wonder why their efforts produce no results. They simply become what women are biologically designed to seek. The men who do not understand these needs remain permanently confused. They do everything they were taught. They give everything they have, and they watch again and again as women choose someone else. Schopenhauer wrote that we can do what we wish, but we cannot wish what we want. Desire is not a choice. It is a response to specific triggers that activate ancient circuitry. The woman in your life does not choose to feel attracted or unattracted. She responds to stimuli that either activate or fail to activate her deepest programming. Your job is not to convince her to want you. Your job is to become someone who naturally triggers the response. This is not about performance. This is about development. The difference matters. A performer learns what to say. He memorizes lines. He executes tactics, but beneath the performance, he remains unchanged. And women sense this. They feel the gap between what he projects and what he is. That gap creates distrust that no technique can overcome. A man who has genuinely developed these qualities does not perform them. He embodies them. His actions flow from who he has become, not from what he has memorized. Women feel this too. They feel the authenticity. And authenticity is the foundation of every form of deep attraction. Robert Greene observed that the greatest seductions in history were not acts. They were expressions of developed character. Casanova did not use techniques. He cultivated himself into someone naturally desired. That is what this video offers you. Not techniques to perform, qualities to develop, not manipulation of others, transformation of yourself. Over the next 40 minutes, I am going to reveal 7 intimate needs that operate in the female psyche. Each one builds on the last. Each one goes deeper than the one before. The first 3 needs operate at the surface level of daily interaction, and miss them, and attraction never forms. The 4th and 5th needs operate at the emotional level. Meet them, and she begins to bond. The 6th and 7th needs operate at the soul level. Satisfy them, and you become irreplaceable. But I must warn you about something. These needs come with responsibility. When you learn to meet them, you gain a form of psychological influence. That influence can build something beautiful or cause genuine harm. The difference lies entirely in your intentions. Machiavelli wrote that power itself is neutral. The same fire that warms a home can burn it down. What I am teaching you today is fire. Use it to create warmth, not destruction. Now let us begin with the first need. And pay attention carefully, because this one surprises most men. Need 1. The need to feel chosen, not settled. For every woman carries a question she rarely speaks aloud. It lives in the back of her mind, like a persistent whisper. The question is this: did he choose me, or did he simply accept what was available? This question matters more than almost anything else in how she experiences a relationship, and most men have no idea it exists. Let me explain the psychology. Freud observed that human beings have an insatiable need to feel special, to feel selected, to feel that they matter uniquely rather than generically. This need is not vanity. It is survival programming. In our evolutionary past, being chosen meant protection, resources, investment. Being settled for meant abandonment when something better appeared. Women carried this programming more intensely than men because the stakes were higher. A woman settled for could be left with children and no provider. A woman chosen would be protected and prioritized. This ancient fear still operates today. When a woman feels chosen, something in her relaxes. She can invest fully because she trusts that her investment will be returned. When she feels settled for, something in her remains guarded. She holds back because she senses that she is replaceable. Here is where most men fail completely. They express interest in a generic way. They compliment her looks the same way they would compliment any attractive woman. They pursue her with the same energy they would pursue any available option, and she feels this. She feels that she could be swapped for someone else without meaningful difference to him. This feeling extinguishes attraction at its root. Robert Greene documented that the most powerful seductions involve making the target feel singular, not one of many, the only one. This is not flattery. This is recognition. You must actually see what makes her different and communicate that you have seen it. A man named Thomas learned this lesson painfully. 42 years old, successful in business, attractive enough. He dated regularly, but nothing lasted beyond a few months. Every woman eventually pulled away with the same vague explanation. "I just don't feel it." Thomas could not understand. He was attentive, generous, available. He did everything right. The problem was invisible to him until someone pointed it out. His compliments were interchangeable. His attention was generic. He treated every woman the same way because he thought that way was correct. He told women they were beautiful, true, but meaningless. Every man tells them this. He told women they were smart, also true, also meaningless. It could apply to anyone. What he never did was recognize what made each woman specifically her. The particular way she laughed when nervous, the specific passion she carried for her obscure interest, the unique way she saw the world that no one else shared. When Thomas began noticing and naming these specific qualities, everything changed. He stopped saying, "You're beautiful," and started saying, "The way your eyes change when you're actually interested in something, not just pretending to be polite. That's rare." He stopped saying, "You're smart," and started saying, "Most people think about that surface level. You went somewhere I didn't expect. How did you get there?" The shift was not technique, it was attention. Real attention to who she actually was, rather than generic appreciation for the category she belonged to. Jung wrote about individuation as the process of becoming one's true self. When you recognize a woman's individuality, when you see her process of becoming, you offer her something almost no one else provides. You offer her the experience of being known. Here is the warning. False specificity is worse than generic appreciation. If you manufacture observations you do not actually hold, she will feel the manipulation. The goal is not to say specific things. The goal is to actually notice specific things. This requires genuine curiosity. You must actually want to know who she is beneath her surface presentation. If that curiosity does not exist, no technique will compensate for its absence. But if curiosity exists, if you genuinely want to understand what makes her uniquely her, then communicating what you discover becomes natural, and that communication makes her feel chosen. The first need is the need to feel chosen. Meet this need, and you establish the foundation for everything else. Now let us move deeper, because the second need explains why attentive men often fail, while seemingly indifferent men succeed. Need 2. The need for emotional fluctuation. Here is a truth that will challenge everything you believe about relationships. Consistent positive attention does not create attraction, it kills it. This is not my opinion. This is documented psychology and understanding. It will transform how you show up in every interaction with women. Let me explain what is happening in the brain. Daniel Kahneman's research on human decision-making revealed that we do not experience absolute states. We experience changes in states. This is why the millionaire does not feel wealthy. He has adapted. His baseline has shifted. It's only changes from baseline register emotionally. The same principle applies to attention and affection. When you provide constant, unwavering positive attention, You establish a baseline. That baseline quickly becomes normal, and normal generates no emotional response. She adapts to your attention the way the millionaire adapts to wealth. It no longer registers. But when attention fluctuates, when warmth varies, when presence ebbs and flows, each fluctuation registers. The return of attention after its absence creates emotional impact. The variation itself becomes the stimulus. Robert Cialdini documented this as the principle of intermittent reinforcement. It is the most powerful schedule for generating psychological engagement. Casinos understand it. Slot machines do not pay consistently. They pay randomly. And that randomness creates addiction where consistent payout would create boredom. I am not suggesting you manipulate women through calculated withdrawal. That would be technique, and technique fails against genuine perception. What I am suggesting is that you live a life that naturally creates fluctuation. The man who has his own purpose, his own passions, his own world, naturally varies in his availability. Some days he is present and warm. Other days he is absorbed in his work, his fitness, his friendships. His attention fluctuates not because he is gaming anyone, but because he has a life that demands his attention. The man who makes a woman, his entire focus has no natural fluctuation. He is always there, always available, always attentive. And this consistency, though it seems loving, creates the baseline problem. His attention stops registering because it never varies. Nature wrote about the will to power as the fundamental human drive. This drive requires something to overcome. Without obstacles, without variation, without challenge, the will stagnates. The same applies to desire. Desire requires fluctuation. Without it, desire flatlines into comfort, and comfort is not attraction. A man named Edward understood this principle poorly at first. He was devoted, which he believed was a virtue. When he was with his girlfriend, his phone went away. His friends understood he was unavailable. His hobbies paused. He gave her everything. She left him for someone who gave her significantly less. Edward was devastated. He had done everything right. How could less be more attractive than more? The answer was fluctuation. The other man had a band. He had friends who mattered. He had nights where he was simply unavailable. His attention was valuable because it was not constant. Its presence meant something because its absence also existed. Edward's attention meant nothing because it was always there. You cannot value what never varies. You cannot desire what has no scarcity. Here is the crucial distinction. Manufactured scarcity is manipulation. It involves pretending to have a life you do not have, creating false unavailability to trigger response. Natural scarcity is authenticity. It involves actually having a life that matters, purposes that demand your energy, relationships and interests that exist independent of any woman. The first creates short-term response, but long-term distrust. The second creates sustainable attraction rooted in genuine desirability. Schopenhauer observed that boredom is the suffering of the empty self. The man who has nothing but a woman in his life is empty. His constant attention comes from having nothing else to give attention to. Women sense this emptiness. It repels them not because they are cruel, but because emptiness signals low value. The man with a full life signals high value through his natural fluctuation. His attention is precious because his attention is claimed by many things. When he gives it to her, that gift has weight. Here is the practice. Build a life worth living, independent of any relationship. Pursue purposes that matter to you. Develop friendships that nourish you. Cultivate interests that absorb you. When you do this authentically, fluctuation happens naturally. You do not need to manufacture it. And when fluctuation happens naturally, her emotional circuitry engages. Each return of your attention registers. Each warm moment has context. Each interaction matters because it is not guaranteed. This is the second need, the need for emotional fluctuation. Meet it through authentic living, and attraction becomes sustainable. But even with choice and fluctuation established, something else must exist for deep connection to form. The third need reveals what that something is. A woman's nervous system is constantly evaluating one question. Is this man strong enough? Not physically, though that can be part of it. Psychologically, emotionally, strong enough to hold his position when challenged. Strong enough to remain calm when storms arrive. strong enough to protect the relationship when threats appear. This evaluation is not conscious. It runs constantly in the background of her perception, processing thousands of microsignals that indicate strength or weakness. Jung identified the animus as the masculine archetype within the female psyche. When a woman encounters a man who embodies this archetype, something in her responds. She feels safe. She can relax her own vigilance. She can surrender into femininity, because masculinity is present to hold space for that surrender. When the archetype is not embodied, she cannot relax. She remains vigilant because no one else is holding strength. And vigilance is exhausting. Vigilance is not attraction. Here is what strength looks like in practice. She tests you not consciously, instinctively. She says something provocative, criticizes something you value, pushes against a boundary. These tests are not cruelty, they are evaluation. She needs to know if you fold under pressure. The weak response is to crumble, to immediately agree, to abandon your position to avoid conflict. This response signals that you cannot be relied upon. If small pressure breaks you, large pressure will destroy you. The strong response is to hold, not with aggression, not with defensiveness, simply with calm, grounded presence. I see it differently. That's not how I experience it. I hear you, but I disagree. Epictetus taught that we cannot control events, only our responses. When you respond to her tests with centered calm rather than anxious capitulation, you demonstrate that your stability does not depend on her approval. This is strength. This is what her nervous system is scanning for. A man named Marcus had no idea he was failing these tests constantly. His girlfriend would criticize his choices. He would immediately justify, explain, apologize. She would express frustration. He would scramble to fix whatever she seemed to want. He thought this was being a good partner. It was actually being a weak one. When he learned to hold his ground, everything shifted. She criticized his decision to spend a weekend with old friends. Instead of canceling or over-explaining, he said simply, "I need that time with them. I'll miss you, but this matters to me." She pushed back. He did not escalate or collapse. He remained calm and unchanged. Later, she told him that moment was when she started respecting him more deeply. Not because he refused her, because he showed her that he had a self-worth respecting. Need for psychological safety. But strength without safety creates fear, not attraction. This is where many strong men fail. They project power, but not warmth. They demonstrate capability, but not care. And the woman, while she may respect them, cannot fully open to them. She needs both strength and safety. The combination is rare, which is why the men who embody both become deeply attractive. Psychological safety means she can be vulnerable without being punished. She can share her fears without being judged. She can reveal her shadows without being rejected. Freud understood that the unconscious carries material we hide, even from ourselves. When a woman finds a man, she can reveal this material too. A bond forms that casual relationships never achieve. She becomes invested because investment has been received. Here is what safety looks like in practice. She shares something she is ashamed of, a past mistake, a current insecurity, a fear she has never spoken aloud. The unsafe response is to judge, advise, minimize, or use the information against her later. Any of these responses teach her that vulnerability is dangerous with you. The safe response is to receive without reaction, to hold her disclosure with the same calm you hold everything else, to communicate through presence rather than words that her shadows do not frighten you. This does not mean you accept everything. Boundaries still exist. But within those boundaries, space exists for her to be fully herself without performance. Marcus Aurelius wrote about accepting the nature of things as they are. When you accept a woman's nature, including her shadows, you offer something most men cannot provide. You offer freedom from performance, and that freedom creates deep attachment. The combination of needs 3 and 4 creates a rare psychological experience. She encounters a man strong enough to hold his ground, but safe enough to hold her vulnerability. This combination does not exist in most men. When she finds it, she recognizes its rarity, and rarity creates value. We are now moving into deeper territory. The next 2 needs operate at the emotional core. They explain why some connections become unbreakable. Need 5. the need to be witnessed in her becoming. Every human being is in process. We are not fixed entities. We are constantly becoming, evolving, transforming into who we might be. A woman needs a man who sees not just who she is, but who she is becoming. This is different from projection. Projection imposes your vision onto her. Witnessing sees her vision and supports its unfolding. Jung described individuation as the central process of human psychology. It is the journey toward becoming one's authentic self. When you witness a woman's individuation, when you see her growth and reflect it back to her, you become part of her journey in a way that creates profound connection. Most men do not witness. They evaluate. They assess her against their criteria. They approve of parts and disapprove of others. They see her as static, fixed, something to be judged rather than something in motion. This evaluation stifles her. She cannot grow toward you if you are constantly grading her current position. The man who witnesses says things like, "You're different than you were 6 months ago, more certain of yourself. I see it." He notices her evolution and names it. He becomes a mirror for her becoming. Robert Greene observed that people fall in love with those who make them feel like better versions of themselves. When you witness her becoming, you make her feel that her growth is real, visible, validated. This feeling creates attachment that physical attraction alone cannot generate. A man named Jonathan practiced this consciously. His partner was building a business, struggling with self-doubt. Instead of offering advice or solutions, he simply reflected what he saw. "You handled that client's situation completely differently than you would have last year. You've changed." She told him later that moment meant more than any encouragement he had ever offered, because he did not encourage her to be something. He recognized that she was already becoming it. Here is the warning. Witnessing requires actual attention. You cannot fake having seen growth you did not notice. The practice demands genuine observation of her evolution over time. If you are not paying attention, you will have nothing to witness. Need 6, the need to exist in his future. Connection without continuity creates anxiety. A woman can feel deeply bonded in the present, but uncertain about whether that bond extends forward in time. She needs to exist in your future, not through promises or premature commitment, through language that includes her in what comes next. Schopenhauer understood that the will reaches forward constantly. We are future-oriented beings. Our sense of security depends partly on whether we can see ourselves in what is coming. When you speak about future events, and she is absent from that language, her nervous system registers threat. When you include her naturally in future-oriented speech, her nervous system registers safety. This is not about making promises you cannot keep. It is about speaking in a way that does not exclude her from consideration. The excluding language sounds like, "When I move to that city. After I finish this project, I'm going to travel for a while. The future is populated with you alone. She is absent from it." The including language sounds like, "When we try that restaurant that's opening next month. I think you'd love that place. We should go sometime." The future naturally contains her. Notice that including language does not require commitment. It requires acknowledgement. She exists in your consideration of what comes next. That acknowledgement meets the need. A man named David had no idea he was failing this need. He talked about his future constantly, but always in solo terms. His goals, his travels, his plans. His girlfriend felt increasingly insecure despite everything else being positive. When David began naturally including her in future-oriented speech, her anxiety dissolved, not because he promised anything, because he stopped speaking as if she did not exist in tomorrow. Machiavelli wrote that wise leaders make their followers feel essential to the vision. The same applies here. When she feels essential to your future, not promised to it, but included in its consideration, something in her settles. She can invest without the fear that she is investing in someone who is planning to leave. Now we arrive at the 7th need. This one operates at the deepest level. It explains why some men become irreplaceable, while others remain interchangeable.